Is good.
Okay, good. We're rolling.
Yeah, we're rolling. So, hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
Rock stars. And how do you like to refer to all your folks?
Oh, that's an interesting one. How do I refer to them? I suppose the guys themselves have come up with all different ones. There's the Plapernauts. Yeah, that one's pretty good. Plapernauts, the Plappers, you know. But I like Plapernauts.
Plapernauts. Do they drink Tang? So I'm sitting here with Mr. Warren Huart of Produce Like a Pro Academy and many other great things. And I'm thrilled because my daughter's here off camera too. She's hanging out with me. But we're here in Hollywood, in Los Angeles for a little vacation. And we had a chance to drop in and say hi and see this magical place where Warren comes to you often.
Yeah, I just asked my wife. I'm marooned in here at least 12 hours, sometimes 15 hours a day, yeah.
Well, it's a cool place. It's beautiful. We're up in, magical Laurel Canyon. You know, you just wander up through the hills and you sort of come into this place. I feel. Do you have? Are some of your neighbors gnomes?
Gnomes?
Yeah.
I don't know. If you were shorter, I mean, come on. Look, you got the beard. You just need to put on like an extra 100 pounds.
I know. I need a few more.
Be a lot shorter. And then you could be my neighbor. Is that what you're trying to say?
No, yeah, I'm just saying.
Move up here. Are you a gnome?
No, I'm not moving up here. I think will always be visiting Hollywood, you know. But no, it just feels like a magical place, like in the hills. Like, you know, you could have people sort of like. Do you have caves, secret caves, and things?
Interesting. You know what? All joking aside, there are parts of Hollywood that do have caves. There was an old studio that my old friend Rick Parker had. Those of you who know him as a producer. I need to interview, by the way, Rick. He had a studio opposite Bar Marmont, you know, where the Chateau Marmont is.
Yeah, I know where the Chateau Marmont is. Yeah,
there was a studio opposite there, and there's actually a tunnel that goes under from his studio, which was underground, or low level, I should say, under Sunset to the chateau. That's because during Prohibition, people would go and they'd go under this tunnel and then appear in this other like hidden space, and there'd be like drinking dens. And the house I used to have in Silver Lake had these buttons like on the doors that you pressed, and they had two lights. And the light was, whether it was safe to come in or not.
Wow, I like that. And prohibition, it's prohibition from drinking, but I wonder, will there ever be a prohibition from recording music? I hope not. Speaking of magical spaces, here we are in your magical space, and we're holding guitars because we are surrounded by beautiful, amazing guitars on every side. Why do you have so many guitars here, Warren?
Because I'm old. I mean, it's interesting. Okay, so this one's relatively recent, the one you're holding here, like probably the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, this is a K, right?
No, it's a Vox.
Oh, it's a Vox.
Yeah, it's a Vox. But it would have been built in Italy. It may have been designed in England, but it was built in Italy. So it's called a Vox Typhoon. And it's a beautiful guitar. I mean, it's a jazz guitar, but it's got a bolt-on neck. So I had the very great Norik Renson do this. Norik is, as far as Los Angeles is concerned, is just like the most insane guitar fixer-upper there is. He does the best setups. He's definitely not the quickest, but he's the best, and he's super inexpensive and unbelievably busy. So I think that's probably why he's not necessarily the quickest. But when I bought that, I bought it for $400 with a neck that was so twisted and out of shape. I mean, like, completely crazy. And he did the same thing with this Harmony 12-string that I got, which I got from eBay for $70. And there was photographs of it.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
And it's really...
Can you do me a favor? Can you play a little Hotel California on it for me? Or maybe Stairway to Heaven, whichever one comes first.
What was it? I'm trying to remember Hotel California. There, yeah.
Well, it's very appropriate because I feel like we're staying at Hotel California for our week visit.
Yes.
You
I
know?
mean, going back to Laurel Canyon for a second, when I was a kid, half the records I used to look at, were recorded in, well, the American records were either recorded in Los Angeles or New York. And then, of course, we had Memphis and all these incredible scenes. But there was the period that all of us go through, at least I'd say all of us, I'm sure most people go through, where they're obsessed with the Doors. And of course, Crosby, Stills and Nash and Janis Joplin, all this great stuff. And behind me is a lot of land. And on that land is a little house. And the little house is owned by Dan Rothschild. And his dad was Paul Rothschild, literally just the house behind. And Paul produced all the Doors records, with the exception of, I think, Soft Parade. Wasn't that done by Bruce Botnick, I think? I could get this wrong, so people feel free to correct me. I'm not an expert. But basically, he did that. He did Crosby, Stills and Nash. He did Janis Joplin. He did like all these seminal records. And I grew up listening to these albums and wanting to make records like that. And living in Laurel Canyon was always something I wanted. Joni Mitchell still, I believe, has a couple of houses on the street. And, this is Lookout Mountain. And Lookout Mountain, of course, is the name of a very famous management company that managed Neil Young and all of this stuff that I grew up listening. So,
but also, Jim Morrison lived right down the street from you, right? He lived right down by the general store, right in Laurel Canyon.
Yeah, so it was like between that and like Sunset Sound, which I always talk about. That studio made a lot of the English records I loved. Sunset Sound, right there. Yeah, so it's no accident that Sunset Sound gets in a lot of my videos and stuff like that, and because the Laurel Canyon Sunset Sound is a big part of my musical upbringing. Now, obviously, I'm a huge Queen fan, and I grew up on a load of English and British and Irish artists as well. Don't get me wrong, I that's a huge part of my personal upbringing. I have an Irish family as well, so I'm a huge Irish music fan as well. So there's a lot of complexity to it. I don't want to make it sound overly simplistic, but to me, if like moving to Los Angeles, I couldn't think of somewhere I'd rather live. And every other person on this street is in the music industry, and every other person out of that has a studio.
Well, LA is just so steeped in music, it's so deep, and it's like every style of music that you're into, I think, has a history here too. There's a history to the musical style, and there's also a history to recording itself. Like, whether you're into modern recording with computers or whether you're into older recordings. I guess once we get into Victrolas and stuff, it starts to go back to the East Coast.
Right.
But by the time it was electrified, it came over here. So speaking of which, we're sitting next to this gorgeous tape machine. Tell us a little bit about what we're sitting next to here, because this is pretty amazing looking.
It's an A80. I've had it now for about, I think we've got it like 10 years ago, at least 8 years ago. And it was all through Jack Douglas. I remember when we came to do that last Aerosmith record, one of the things we wanted to do was do all the basic tracking on tape. And another one of the things I grew up listening to was New York period of like late 60s right through to early 80s. And as we were talking off camera earlier, the golden period for recording for me is mid-late 70s through early mid-80s. Probably, to be really specific, like 78 to 83. There's obviously lots of exceptions around that. It's interesting. I think if I was to be in a band, I'd want to be in a band between 68 and 73. That's when everybody looked the coolest.
Right, totally.
I'd like to be, in a band that did Exile on Main Street or Dark Side of the Moon or something like that. Don't get me wrong. But sonically, for me, the best sounding records, I'm not talking about songs or whatever, well, some of the songs as well, obviously. But sonically, I love the period of the very late 70s and the early 80s.
So let me ask a question about that. So that late 70s to early 80s, when you're thinking about that, you're talking about the best sounding records, which means that the creations themselves that were coming out at that time were the things that resonate with you. One of my first questions I wanted to ask was like, was there certain pieces of gear that were happening then? But I'm inclined to think it's less about that and it's more about just like that convergence of creativity and using the gear that was there.
I think it's both. I mean, the gear is always secondary, obviously, always secondary. But when I asked Jack, about the records that he made that I loved, he was like, "Oh, we made them on this machine." So we went out to find this. It actually, he and I went to Beverly Hills, and there was I can't remember the guy's name, but he had a studio in his parents' house, and he was selling this machine.
Nice.
And it was $2,500.
That's a good price.
That's a really good price.
That's actually half of what I paid for my machine, which is an MCI JH16, which I also found out here in Los Angeles. And believe it or not, I shipped it all the way back to Nashville, which seems a little unnecessary these days. Like you could probably find a tape machine in Nashville. But how often do you get to use it?
Not as often as I'd like. We did, basically I used a clasp system for a while, and almost everything was tape going transferred into Pro Tools, and that was great. The biggest issues come down to always with tape, tape stock. We do have a decent amount of tape stock sitting down there, and obviously with clasp, you get a lot more life out of it than you do when you've just got a reel of tape that you've done 3 or 4 takes on, and you stack it up. And I had albums when I was only working on tape, for instance. I'm sure you had the same experience where we're up to like 20 or 30 reels, not even thinking about it. If you're doing 4 or 5 takes per song and you're filling up a reel, a song can end up being 1 to 2 reels of tape, at least a reel and a half. So it can get pretty expensive pretty quickly.
We also did a bunch of records where they were so budget that we could only afford 2 or 3 reels of tape to do the entire record on. Those are tricky, where you've got like this one little bit of tape left in there, and you got to like get your track and then start overdubbing in there. It was scary. It was also cool because those were the times where you'd rewind a little too far, and then at mix or rough mix you'd get like snippets of weird stuff landing in on tracks, as you're going to mix a song. You want to take us around the studio a little bit and show us
Absolutely. You're going to be our first ever studio tour.
Oh, sweet. Yeah. So let's look around the studio and see what you got here. So there's racks of stuff. You got a big giant thing here in the middle with cool looking buttons on it. I noticed that.
Big giant thing with cool looking buttons. Yeah. It's an SSL I've had. It's a hodgepodge SSL where it's like 4,000 frame with 6,000 channels mixed in. It's basically Bruce, the Desk Doctor.
Oh yeah, I remember them down in the valley.
Yeah, he's the guy. When talking about any SSL in Los Angeles, 99% of people will talk about Bruce.
Yeah.
Bruce Millett, he keeps LA's SSLs running, with a few exceptions, don't get me wrong. Charlie Ballas, there's some other guys out there, but the thing about Bruce is, and he can't be overly talked about, he can't be overly praised. He's a very generous guy. He has come out on many Sundays when I've got deadlines to help out. We were doing, I recorded and mixed the Black Veil Brides live. It was a live DVD Blu-ray called Alive and Burning, and we did it at the El Rey. And so I recorded it. I came back, I mixed it. The band did some fixes, sent me some stuff. We went through all that process, and basically we had a Monday morning delivery and some last minute changes. And this was in the middle of, I believe it was in like the middle of a summer with massive surges in power that LA gets.
Yeah, right.
And despite any precautions you take, you can't, things go down. One of which was I think we lost the center section on the console. And it was Sunday at like 7 p.m. And he came out.
He came out and fixed it. That's awesome.
He came out, and that story is not unusual. He should be, and he is praised by everybody that knows him. And pretty much every SSL I know in town has had some Bruce love. Not we're having a whole Bruce conversation here, but it's
Do you mind
very
if I call you
important.
Bruce?
Yeah, if I call you Bruce. Hey, Bruce. All right, Bruce. All right, Bruce. Anybody know what we're doing? Anyway, what's really, really important is to remember that behind, the music industry is there's a really good team of people who look after and care about each other. And
it's remarkable when you first discover that. You get into this stuff and you start meeting the people that make the stuff happen. You're talking about your guitar tech, the console tech. It's like, and you talk about Sunset Sound too. And Sunset Sound,
has 2 full-time techs.
Struck me. It was this incredible, like their tech room.
Yeah,
is more impressive than most studios I've ever seen.
Yeah, I think It's interesting because Los Angeles takes a little bit of time to discover that. When you first move to LA, you know, it's such a massive city compared with somewhere like Nashville. I mean, Nashville's obviously growing fast, but you know, I know there's 4,000 people a month moving to Nashville. Well, you know, if we stop growing here and give you 20 years, you still won't, you know, this is a massive city. And the music industry and the entertainment industry is so entrenched in it here. But after you've been here for a while, you discover that there's this wonderful infrastructure of people that care about each other and actually help. It's a lot easier to see in Nashville. The first time I went to Nashville for Summer NAMM, you know, I went to Vance Power's Sputnik party. Right. You were there, everybody was there, everybody knows each other. The infrastructure there is a lot more, it's worn on the sleeve. Everybody knows each other and helps each other. And I love that. But that exists also in Los Angeles. There's a really, you know, we were talking about guys like, I mean, there's Ulrich Wilde and Cameron Webb, who are really good friends, and there's so many of those guys. And then you've got the visiting guys like Jack Douglas is here part of the year making records, and, you know, I'm about to mix Yardbird's album for him. You know, there's all this different stuff that's happening. And there's so many talented people who live here that are musicians and artists as well, you know. So it's a great infrastructure. It's just not quite as evident as I see in Nashville initially.
You want to take a look at what this SSL is all about?
Sure.
Want to get close for a sec? I think that a lot of people watching this may be familiar with plugins, but maybe never get a chance to actually see an SSL channel and understand how similar the plugins you see can be to the look and feel. So you've got like, this is all the routing up here, right?
Yep.
And you can do, it looks like you can do up to 32 channels.
Yeah.
Route it up to 32
Basically what
buses.
I'll do, when we do a couple of tricks, like on the vocal, we'll send to different multi-effects. And I try to, and this is very typical, I try to print as much stuff as possible. So that if I ever have to open up a session or recall it, if there's specific vocal effects we did using like the H3000, or, you know, I have a Lexicon, PCM 90 there. I even have a Lisa's Quadraverb, which I'm a huge fan of. You know, because talking about that for a second, you know, I didn't grow up with any real money. It would be an understatement. So I value a lot of inexpensive equipment, you know. The Quadraverb to me was like, and the MIDI verb and all these kind of stuff were like, where's my MIDI verb? It's not in the rack at the moment. I think it's being repaired. I think it's being repaired, my MIDI verb. But the point is like, these inexpensive pieces of equipment, I used to use them, you know, with ADATs and 4-tracks and stuff, and I know how to get the best out of them. I mean, the King's Chamber on a Quadraverb, best sounding reverb ever. It's just, you know, I mean, obviously,
some cool sound.
Can't just use it on everything, but there's.
And the Lexicon LXP1 and LXP5.
Yeah, the cheaper Lexicons that came out were affordable.
Tiny units.
Yeah, there's so much great stuff. I think that I like mixing it all together. So there's a lot of outboard and stuff here, but essentially, yes, the SSL can be a big part of the sound. Now, I don't always just mix entirely through an SSL. I'll mix in the box, I'll mix hybrid through an SSL. I also mix through a CADAC console, which has a great sound as well. So I think that...
A CalRec or a
CADAC?
A CADAC.
CADAC's not quite as well known as a CalRec, although a CalRec isn't that well known either. A CADAC made consoles specifically for studios for the longest time. You know, usually under the request of the engineers, very specifically made. Not, you know, in the same spirit as Trident. Trident obviously were their own consoles that they made for themselves that became a console manufacturer. CADAC was, you know, very instrumental in a lot of the records of the 70s. However, they ended up and still do installations now for huge theatre projects. So a lot of theatres you go to have custom-made CADAC consoles.
Oh, cool.
You know.
Have you ever been to the Harrison console factory?
I did.
In Nashville?
I was there and filmed something with Glenn Fricker there.
It's wild to see the inside of the place.
Yeah.
Isn't it cool?
Yeah,
I love just seeing. It's like you talk about these people that do the tech support for all the equipment throughout Los Angeles, and when you get a chance to see their shops, it's just like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory for recording stuff. You know, there's Steve Sadler is the MCI guy in Nashville, and if you go inside his shop, it's like MCI console parts and tape machines, and it's just, you know, it's just cool to see that. You know, it's cool to know that exists and that there's that kind of.
I agree. It's nice to know that there's still people that like really care. I mean, like that's the Bruce Millett out here, and the fact that and Norik Renson's guys, because it does concern me, as we get older and the whole nature and everything moves so much more online, that we move into this sort of world of disposability.
Right.
And I do encourage two opposing ideas. One opposing idea is inexpensive, creativity, all about creativity, don't worry about the quality of the gear. I believe that 100% to be true. I really do, because I know that great music was always made in some of the worst situations,
right,
by really young guys. When I was looking for the Jeff Emmerich's book, sitting over there, when Jeff Emmerich did Revolver, I believe he was 19. Maybe he was 20. He was either 19 or 20 years old when he engineered that. And he was thrown in the deep end because the engineer, there was a strike, there was a union strike, and they had to make the record. And Norman Smith, I believe his name is. Sorry if I'm screwing everything up, or it's quite possible. But anyway, he was unavailable because of a union strike.
Oh, that's
so
great.
Jeff moves from assistant to engineer.
Classic story of moving from intern or assistant up to an engineer spot.
Yeah, but the lesson for me was, I mean, obviously he could have blown it, but the lesson for me is that you don't have to necessarily be a seasoned veteran to make great recordings.
Right.
However, acquired knowledge, there's no substitute for it.
Right.
So when I have a constant conversation with people talking about, the right way and the wrong way, and I'm like, well, really, there is no right way and wrong way. If you have 15 different skill sets in recording, you make a decision based on that. The reason why you become a producer with years of experience, and the reason why people come to you is they come and go, oh, I want to do this track in an EDM style, but I want to do this one as a jazz song, and I'd like to do that. And maybe the jazz one is a pair of stereo mics or a Blum line in a room with an incredible band, but the EDM one is done completely in the box. And I think that that's a wonderful challenge as a producer, to be able to do all of these things. So it's like, yes, I'll mix hybrid through Pro Tools and the console, and then I'll stay in the box if I want loud, slamming, in your face, like super digital to the best abilities of digital. And then if I want something really old, 50s retro, maybe I'll mix through my CADAC.
Get that RCA 44 over there.
Yeah, that one's an AEA, and there's two RCAs as well. Yeah, I have a big collection of gear, and yeah, it's that kind of acquired knowledge.
Yeah.
And between plugins, great gear, interchangeability. Look,
and I think there's a couple of approaches too. Sometimes you've acquired the knowledge and you can jump in and you can understand how to mic up a jazz ensemble or how to do EDM. And then sometimes smart producers also just know that they need to have connections and go hire somebody for particular things.
Yeah, absolutely.
I see that sort of approach all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly. I think the underlying message is just be creative and get it done.
Right.
But just keep learning. The more, it's all about learning.
Yeah.
You asked me when I was sitting there noodling on guitar about noodling on guitar, and I'm like, I have a guitar in my hands at all times. Doesn't matter whether I'm answering emails or working on a song. I like to have a guitar in my hands because it means that I can be in the song, I can understand the song, I can work on the vocal harmonies, if I have to just run in there and replay the acoustic guitar part or play the acoustic guitar part, I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
If I have to play the bass. At the moment, the album I'm doing with David from the Workday release, he's playing the drums and the piano and acoustic guitar, and I'm playing everything else, all the electrics.
That's fun, man.
Or,
That's fun.
Bass on it, some acoustics, and that to me, what could be better? We sit down, we work on the arrangement. I get to be a musician, a producer, an engineer, or a mixer, or whatever. It's.
Have you ever? I don't mean to take this in the wrong way, but have you ever slept with your guitar?
Yes.
I used to do that sometimes. I used to take my acoustic guitar to bed with me and just like snuggle up next to it, just because I thought it would impart some musical vibes.
Well, I definitely fell asleep playing guitar.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I think. But never specifically slept with it like that.
You want to do
that could be you.
Should we do a scan of some of the guitars here too? You got some cool stuff.
I have real randomy kind of things. It's like I have.
This one has a special sound because of the airline tape.
Because Delta decided to smash it. Yes.
That's beautifully old.
So it's held together by Delta tape.
And then what's the Ibanez Geo here? Is this
Those
can
are
you
the
play
little
faster on that?
micros. One's my son's and one's my wife's. The orange one is my son's, and the pink one is my wife's.
Love it.
My son actually features quite heavily. He does very well because that's my LL16, by the way, my main tracking
Yeah, that
acoustic.
beautiful. Sounds
The
wonderful.
Yamaha, yeah. There's a Vox over there, which I got for $400 that we were talking about earlier,
Yeah,
that Norick
right.
rescued. My son has a little Baby Martin there, which is signed by Ace Frehley and Steven
great.
Tyler and Wayne Kramer, for those that know
Oh
who
yeah, I
Wayne
see
is.
Wayne. Yeah, MC5, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and Tom
Kick out the
Hamilton.
jams, my friend.
Yeah, Wayne's amazing.
Sorry, this is the clean version.
That's okay. That Yamaha Pacifica is my main tracking guitar.
Yeah. What's that one right there?
That is a Tanglewood. It's my pop acoustic. It's very poppy. I've got Elixir
What is
strings on
that?
it.
That's like it's like a minor 11/9 or something. What is an open tuning?
I suppose technically it is. I mean, because it's got a 4 on it with the A. So yeah, it'd be an 11. There's no 9 in it because it would have to have an F sharp.
All right.
So
I'm just making up numbers.
no, it'd be
I'm
a
glad
minor
you know what
11.
you're talking about.
It would be a minor 11. Because if you think about it, it's 1, 4, 7, 3, 5, 1. So yeah, minor 11.
It's my phone number. How'd you know?
There you go.
All right, and then what do we got here? This is the, another Yamaha.
Another Yamaha.
Awesome.
I wanted to get a Strat, and I didn't. I need Strat sounds like once every 100 songs, and I started looking online to buy a used Strat, and I was just like, I'm just going to buy a Pacifica. And I bought a Pacifica, and that was $200 on eBay.
Let's talk about this for a sec. So one of the things that makes a Strat is you've got 3 pickups, although this one's a humbucker here.
Yeah.
And you've got a 5-way switch, which I think originally was a 3-way switch, right?
It was originally a 3-way switch. Yeah.
And then what was happening, these number 2 here and number 4 is like, it's in between the 2
Sure.
pickups, right?
Yeah.
But is it actually one of them is out of phase from the other?
I don't believe so, but I believe that's the. It's like a tremolo being a vibrato being a tremolo.
Yeah.
An out of phase is not actually out of phase. It isn't out of phase, but it produces a sound that people love. But you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe it's out of phase because that would actually have to reverse the polarity of one of the pickups.
Right.
It's just that they're spaced, so they hear the sound very slightly differently, so there might be some cancellation. I mean, that's typical. So maybe things are the polarity is slightly shifted, but it's not a phase reverse,
Right.
which would be what out of phase would be.
Right.
But it's a euphemism for saying it's out of phase. It's the out of phase sound.
You get that cool sound.
Yeah, it's like a tremolo vibrato is tremolo and tremolo is vibrato. You go to an amp and it says it has a vibrato unit on it, but it's actually a tremolo.
Is it really? So none of the amp vibratos are really vibrato?
Yeah, because this is called a tremolo arm, yes,
Oh right, I see. Yeah,
but it's actually vibrato because it's changing pitch, not changing. It's
I
not
just call it a
changing volume.
whammy. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. It is a
It's
vibrato. You're right.
It's just one of those things that we do in music, and that's quite all right. We can have big fights about it on forums and stuff like that, but that's just what we do in music. We come up with the wrong names.
That's right.
And it sticks.
Fun after all. So then I know what this thing is here too.
That's the world's cheapest guitar.
World's cheapest guitar, but it also has
Nashville tuning or high strung.
Nashville tuning. So that's the top strings of a 12-string
That is a
guitar.
12-string, yeah. It was found in a skip, thrown out. It actually had 2 machine heads missing, I believe, tuning pegs. So
Wait, what
went
does
to
that mean?
Guitar
It was
Center.
found in a skip. You were skipping down the road and you noticed it.
I think we might have changed the whole. Did we change the whole set? Oh, I think these are so generic that the ones we bought from Guitar Center actually look exactly the same as the ones that were already on it. I think the whole set was $795 or $695. I mean, they're super cheap.
Nice.
They're not going to win any awards, but the point is like, it was just laying outside of a studio inside a trash.
Man, that's a good place to find a guitar.
Right, but honestly, you could go onto eBay and pick one of these up. I don't know, what is this? It's a Korean made. I would say $50 to $100.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not really worth any more than that. If you put regular strings on it, it just sounds like a kind of a crappy acoustic.
Right, but for
With
high
high
strings,
strung on it, it's
you can get
amazing.
away with a lot of good stuff.
So that's my baby. We're not sure on the year. We sometimes say late 70s, we sometimes say early 80s. I think it's probably early 80s. But that's my go-to Yamaha acoustic. I mean, it's on like half of the last Aerosmith record. We would put J45s up. I remember Joe Perry and Jack Douglas are both really good friends with name drop with Johnny Depp. And Johnny's a guitar player and obviously a very wealthy film star. So his guitar collection was unbelievable. And they would come in every day with like different vintage vintage Martins and Gibsons. And we would use them and quite often. But this beat out a lot of those guitars. And we'd always try to beat it. But it's like a similar experience I had with the Ludwig Supraphonic. It's like the Ludwig Supraphonics are like the sound of rock and roll.
Yeah, exactly.
And we would do the same thing. People would come in with a different handmade, the Fray in particular on their second album. Ben, I love teasing him about this. He's a good friend of mine. I tease him all the time. He'd come in with a different handmade. This is something over brass with a this and a walnut hoop with a this, that, and the other, and blah, blah, blah.
Pre-stressed to look
it's
ancient.
$3,000 handmade by pygmies in the rainforest. You know what I mean? And it'd come in and it'd be like, dong. You're like, oh, it sounds cool. And you put the Supraphonic up and you go, like that. He's like, yeah, I know. Get all dejected, and it's just
well, you know, the Yamaha, when I was interviewing Jody Stevens at Ardent Studios in Memphis, he had a Yamaha right there, and it was the same one that they used for all the Big Star records for, like, 13, I think, was recorded with a Yamaha.
Yeah, I'm a huge
Alex
Big Star
Chilton.
fan. Yeah, I did a lot of work with the Bangles in the late 90s, and they would do Big Star covers in their set, and they were Big Star fans.
Yeah.
Big Star were like probably the Paisley sound, which was, all of that mid 80s LA scene kind of stuff, all came from Big Star.
Interesting.
Yeah, so a whole Paisley sound.
I'm gonna have to learn more about the Paisley sound.
Yeah, I mean, it was like it was where like the early Bangle stuff, when everything was kind of jangly.
Oh yeah, right.
It was based on some of the psychedelic kind of bands, but then Big Star were like we used to do. I remember when I was with the Bangles, we used to do September Girls. It was a big staple in their set. And it just has those wonderful kind of birds-ish harmonies.
It's like jangly guitars, but then you got the Leslie background vocals and stuff to give it the psychedelic effect.
But not so kind of like ultra psychedelic. So it was just kind of in that mixture of like pop with psychedelia, and just really, really great. We didn't really get so much of that, but in England, but you definitely hear like the Lars and stuff like that definitely owes a little bit to that kind of the Big Star.
So something else here is catching my eye. So let me pull it out and hand it to you, because we want to hear what this thing sounds like.
Oh.
So this is the sitar. We were just talking about Jim Morrison. Here we are in Laurel
That's
Canyon.
the Jerry Jones who.
And I'm handing this over to you so that we can hear what this guy sounds like here.
It's like that.
It's like psychedelic Blue Oyster Cult or something.
Yeah.
That's great.
Definitely about arpeggios though. Arpeggios and single lead lines, you can get blues on it. Blues sitar. But it's
That's super cool. Yeah, I haven't had a chance to record any sitar, but I want to do it. And then there was something else you were showing me when we got here earlier. I thought I'd have you point it out again. What's this new thing? You want to talk about that?
You know what? We've got a video up at the moment about it. So this is currently being done as a giveaway. It's a German company called, and I'm going to mess it up. I say it both ways in my video, either Tegeler or Tegeler. But to say I'm blown away with this is an understatement. It's essentially an SSL style bus compressor and a Pultec style, and I say style, it's not a Pultec style EQ. What I love about it is A, it sounds amazing. B, it's got a sidechain low cut of 60 and 120, which is huge. C, you can do EQ into compression or compression into EQ. I absolutely love it, and I believe with shipping, it's $1,700 from Germany.
Wow.
And
that's a great price to get 2
yeah,
units.
I mean, it's not cheap, don't get me wrong. It's not like a $200 thing. But
yeah, but you could use it a lot.
Yeah, to put on if you want to come out of your master bus and go into some hardware, it's pretty freaking amazing. And I used it on my SSL and bypassed my SSL bus compressor and bypassed my beautiful mastering EQs. And I think the biggest lesson was the limitations of the SSL bus compressor not having the sidechain function, you know, which was something that wasn't popular back in those days. But now, you know, digital has changed our lives, and quality of everything has risen, which is always why I laugh when people start complaining about MP3s. I'm like, you and I, when we were kids, how did we listen to music? On an AM radio, one speaker,
cassette,
or a cassette.
Yeah.
So when people are like, MP3s don't sound good, I'm like, I mean, maybe they don't sound as good as, you know, a 192 frickin' wave, but compared with the way I grew up, even the crappiest iPhone earbuds and listening to, you know, I fall asleep at night listening to Dark Side of the Moon or Genesis Trespass, or, you know, I'm a prog guy outside of Queen. And classical music, I can fall asleep with earbuds so much better than when I was a kid, like on my cassette player with my, you know, 1000th listen of a cassette like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we used to listen to Dr. Demento. I'd stay up till almost midnight on a Sunday with my, you know, transistor radio, and I'd take my Panasonic cassette recorder and I'd put it in record and I'd jam the mic up against the speaker. Yeah. And then I'd record the Funny Five and take it to school and go play it for my friends. That's how I learned about Weird Al, you know.
Weird Al, there you go.
Well, that's awesome. Well, thanks so much for showing us around the studio, dude. This is really fantastic seeing all this.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
What a pleasure to be here in this magical place that may or may not have gnomes living in caves nearby.
Well, we have a gnome here today with us.
Just me.
He's lost a lot of weight and grown, but...
That's right.
I'm jealous of the beard. Very envious, I should say.
Awesome. So
my wife won't let me grow one.
This is going to be on Recording Studio Rockstar's channel.
Marvelous.
So once again, let us know how we can find out more about your channel and follow you guys.
Well, obviously you can go to producelikeapro.com. You can sign up for the email list. There's tons of free stuff. And we are doing a competition on the Tegeler at the moment where you can win it.
Awesome. We'll try and get it up in time for that.
Marvelous. Thank you.
Thanks, Rockstars. See you around the studio.
Have a marvelous time recording and mixing.
Oh, hit the subscribe button. Like it.
Subscribe, like, share.
Do all that
hit the bell.
Stuff. Yeah. Ding, ding.
Ding, 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 ding.